What is up, YouTube? Today, got some goodies for you. You're probably wondering why I got two water pumps sitting here. But I'm going to go in a little discussion. I'm going to try to make this a quicker video. That way it's not a half hour, 45 minutes. But we'll see how long it takes. But, going to talk about the rabbit hole of the budget 350. I got these two water pumps here on a trade deal for the valve covers off of the 55, the original valve covers. I refinished them. I had them listed for sale before I refinished them. I only wanted $100 for them. I took them down. I refinished them because I got some new valve covers for the 55. And after listing them, a gentleman hit me up, said he had two of these electric water pumps. This one is an Assault. And then the other one is a CSI, which is basically now known as CSR. This is like a $400 water pump. And this one is probably about 120, 150 bucks on eBay. A pretty good deal for a trade. So that's a bargain. What I want to get into a little bit is how you go down the rabbit hole on a budget build. And that's going to be what's in our next box here. As you can see, I have some Aroso Ultra 40 wires. Box is a little beat up, but I got these from a buddy of mine. And they are brand new wires, never used. But I bought new wires. Granted, I need new wires for what I'm about to show you next. But I could have went a totally different direction with this thing, but I went down the rabbit hole. I spiraled down. And it is still budget in comparison to what this stuff costs new. Those wires I just showed you, I got those for $110. They're $230 something plus tax, because I'm in New Jersey. So about $240, $250 for those wires if I were to buy them new. So that's a pretty good savings. Here's something I didn't need. Crank trigger. I tried running a crank trigger years ago. I had a really nice ignition setup, and I never got it to work out right. Come to find out, the harness, I figured this out as I was pulling the car apart. The harness for the ignition box came from the factory pinned upside down. I should have caught it, but MSD probably should have caught it before they put it in the box that way. So I went through 3 MSD boxes to figure it out after I pulled the whole car apart, pulling the harness and everything out, and it was too late by that time. But I got this for like 170 bucks, 177 I think it was, after PayPal fees, shipping. So for that price, too good of a deal to pass up, and I look for things randomly and try to find deals. So I found this. So before just saying I'll buy that, I go to myself, well, if I can find a crank trigger distributor for around 100 bucks, I'll buy the crank trigger. So I hit the guy up about this. He had it. Worked the deal out, bought that. This was on eBay, it was $85 plus shipping or whatever. So this ended up being like $107 and some change, round up to $108. But $108 for Maori crab cap crank trigger distributor. So I have under $300 into this setup. Now, the reason I did this was I was going to buy an ignition box, a coil, a distributor, and the distributor that I would want, like a Pro Billet, would probably be, even used, they go for about $250 to $300. New, they're over $300 for a nice Pro Billet small block Chevy distributor from MSD. So to me, this was basically like as if I was buying a nice distributor. I did get a nice distributor out of it, just with a crank trigger. So, there's that. Next, I searched for a 6AL box. I thought about buying a grid setup for the ignition because I wanted something nice in the car that I could play with. I like digital boxes, so there was only a couple boxes I really wanted, like a programmable style, either 6AL2 programmable, a 7 programmable, or the grid, which I was going to do a 6AL, buy the grid box to program it and everything, and the 6AL is kind of just a power box. It's kind of a cheaper way and a trick to do it. You don't need to buy the actual grid, the little black box or whatever they call it, the power box that goes with the grid. You can buy the grid and then get a 6AL box and do it that way. So that's what I was going to do. I was like, well, you know, I can buy the grid box new. I got a guy who could get me a deal on one, probably for like around $500. I think they're $550 from Jegs. He usually gets me a pretty decent discount. And then I was just going to buy like a cheap 6AL box. So I posted up looking for a 6AL. And a buddy of mine did have a 6AL, but it's the programmable box that I wanted. So he told me to make an offer on it. He goes, I'm pulling it out of the car. I'm going with a grid. So shoot me an offer. So I said, I don't know, $200? You do that for it? He goes, yeah, I'll do $200 for it. This box, I think, is like $550 now. You can look up the part number. It's part number 6530. Programmable 6AL-2. And I got it for $200. So then I had a plan to use a coil that I had laying around. But that same friend goes to me, would you like the coil? So I'm like, I think I'm alright. You know, I'll use what I have here or whatever. He goes, well, for $50, I'll throw in the coil. So I'm like, what coil is it? Ends up being the HVC2 coil. This coil is like $200 or $300. So for $50, it's a no-brainer. I think it's actually like $230 or $250 for this coil. Regardless, $50. So I got these two items for what this cost. So in this ignition setup, this was $250. The wires were 110, so that's $360. The crank trigger was 177. So we're at like around, let's say $600. I'm tired. It's been a long day. It's like 12:30 in the morning right now, so I apologize for my crappy math skills. But we'll say about $600 is what I got into the ignition. I figured it out the other day, but I forget exactly. I think it was like 600 or maybe like 610, give or take. But $600 for this ignition, and I priced everything out new just to see how budget friendly this rabbit hole I went down was. And turns out it's actually very budget, considering that this is $1,900 worth of stuff. So the distributor they don't make, it's a Maori. They don't make a Maori crab cap distributor anymore. They make an MSD one. It's probably the same thing, most likely. Very similar, at least. And that distributor is $300 and something. The crank trigger was $400 something, I think, or $380 around there. Like I said, the wires were $230 something. The box is $5 something. The coil's $250 or whatever. So with tax on all that, I figured it out. It was over $1,900, almost $2,000 worth of parts. So when you look at it from that perspective, you kind of go, yeah, it's budget. You know, compared to what I would have spent new, Now, I could have a problem with something here. You know, maybe there's a sensor bad I gotta buy. Maybe the distributor's beat. That's the gamble you take. That distributor is really a simple distributor, though. There's nothing in it. All it does is rotate, really. So as long as the crank trigger is good, I shouldn't have a problem with that. As long as the gear and stuff's on it is good. So, with that being said, this is a gamble buying this stuff used. But at $600 compared to $2,000, that's a very big price difference. Very big price difference. Now, I could have did this stuff cheaper. Like I said, I had a coil here, so I could have saved the $50 on this. And I could have used this box. So there's $50. And I could have just bought a distributor. But I would have kind of spent the same amount of money as the crank trigger with the Maori distributor. So it really depends what deals you can find on your budget. You know, back in 10 years ago, I probably wouldn't be able to do this, to be honest with you. You know, I've ran a lot of cheap stuff. But anyway, let's get on with our next set of goodies. As you can see, and if you watch my dad's YouTube channel, you've already seen these. 2 tunnel rams. Why do I have 2 tunnel rams? You think I'm building 2 motors, 2 water pumps, 2 tunnel rams. Well, one of my older videos, I showed you the sheet metal tunnel ram I had. And I started thinking, and after research, it was more trouble to make it work the way I wanted to do it than what it probably was worth. Granted, it would have been different, and it would have been customized the way I wanted to do it. But that intake, after finding research, finding out information on it after doing research, it's basically 40 horsepower less than these. So I don't like losing power or having power on the table like that. Not to that extent. Not to say that this is going to outrun the dual plane that's on it right now, even with the heads cam intake setup I'm going to do. But, or a single plane that's cheaper than a tunnel ram. But that sheet metal tunnel ram is a deal that I worked out with a buddy of mine. And after the research, like I said, I didn't want to go through the extensive work I had to do, because I was going to literally cut that intake apart with a grinding wheel or a saw, and I was going to make a floor for it, and I was going to make it work, because a lot of people started saying that that intake was trash and it wouldn't perform. So I was going to show them that I could make it perform, but sometimes it's not worth going through the trouble of doing it, especially now that I don't have the time really to go through that extensive amount of work. So I found this one on Marketplace, and this is again the rabbit hole that I went down. This intake was relatively cheap, too good of a deal to pass up, so I bought it. So like I said, I look for things, so in my mind how it works, I'm like, well, if I can find one cheap, I'll buy it, and then I'll recoup the money from selling the sheet metal one I have. Alright? That's what I thought. So I posted the sheet metal one for sale, and a gentleman hits me up and says, I have a tunnel ram that I will trade you, since you're looking for an old school tunnel ram. Because I put stuff up for sale, for trade, things like that. And really, I was getting this because it's a tunnel ram, and yeah, it's old school, it's an Edelbrock. Not 100% what I wanted. Wanted something a little bit more old school, but this would get me by. I can make this work. I can work with this. I like this. It looks nice, you know. I dig it. But when you offer me something like this is pretty much originally what I wanted, or the weigh-in, which the weigh-in is closer to this designed, but this doesn't say weigh-in, and there is internally a different design. So, or I wanted like the Holley, like, I forget what it's called, strip dominator or something like that. whatever the Holly tunnel ram version was, Dominator, something like that. But he offered me this, and I said yeah, along with $150. So, how do you beat that? You get rid of the intake. That intake was about, sheet metal one I think was $450 to $500 new. And I did work for my buddy and stuff, so he bought me that intake because I did the work for him. And I traded for this and got $150. So I can't really go wrong on that deal. And then I'll sell this one, because now I don't need this one. So if I can make a little bit of money off this, that'd be great. But even if I broke even, made $150. So I'm not complaining. But the budget stuff these days in this economy we're in is pretty hard. But I did want to show you some of the deals I got. I did buy a set of valve covers. I got those for $50. Might have been $100. I can't remember. I'll have to look and find out for sure. But they're $400 Moroso valve covers, and I ended up spraying them gold. I just don't want to grab them right now. But a friend of mine gave me Moroso ones, blue, painted those gold, and they're what's on the car now. So that's another video I'll show you another time, because I want to get this wrapped up. But that's the rabbit hole I'm talking about. You know, it spirals pretty quick when you're into this stuff like this. And the deals sometimes are just too good to pass up. But if you can get deals like this and make a couple bucks on it, sell it, you know, you can finagle your money a little bit and finally get your project done if you know how to move the stuff. And like, this intake's worth more than what I paid for it, to be honest. These go for $400 or $500 from what I've seen, at least online. And you know, I got it for less than that. So not half, but less. So that gives you a little bit of an idea. But if you can work deals like that, barter, if you got something that you don't want, somebody else might want it. Those valve covers that I traded for the water pumps, I didn't want them. They were nice once I finished them. They were really nice. But I didn't want them. You know, I wanted gold Moroso. I wanted something to look a little bit more old school. So that kind of gives you an idea of the direction I'm heading with the car. Right now it's too dark to go out there and show you guys the car and the things I've done. My dad's video, if you check his page out if you haven't seen it, there's kind of a little bit of updates in there. But I'll take a video in the daytime maybe this weekend if it's not raining and stuff, and try to put an update out there for you guys. Alright, so as far as our budget 350 goes, still budget, but I think we're probably going to end up being pretty close to about $3,000. I didn't put a price, or a number I should say. I didn't put a number on what the budget was for the engine, but I think we're going to end up around $3,000. So I was kind of trying to see where I'd end up, you know, into the motor. But I got a couple more things to get. This actually, a gentleman hit me up. He might be willing to trade me a set of roller rockers for it. So I got to check that out, because I do need roller rockers for the cam. I need something adjustable. My heads didn't come with anything. So, you know, if I could work a deal where I get rid of this, get the roller rockers, something that I'll definitely, you know, do if they're a good brand, because I want something name brand. Valvetrain's not something I want to mess around with and have junk parts in. I kind of looked at the Speedmaster shaft mount rockers because I thought they might be decent, and after some research, found out that they're garbage. So steering clear away from that. But I am, however, or did, however, order a Speedmaster timing belt. And here we go with the spiral again. That's not in yet. Maybe I'll take a video of that when it comes in. But they're timing belt drives. They are decent from what I've heard, as long as you use a good belt. It's kind of hard to mess up a belt drive, I believe. I'm going to look at it a little more and see how it's made. But I did order that. That was $333.79 plus tax. I think it ended up being like $355 or $357 shipped, tax. Well, free shipping because it was Jegs, but taxes and everything, it was like $350. And that was another thing. I wanted to put a new timing chain and gear in the car. I wanted to change the front timing cover on the car and a cam button. Cam button's $20 or 15 around there. The Cloy's timing chain is like 110, and then the front cover is about $80. So you're looking at about $210 for a timing chain and gear setup, or spend another $140 and get a belt drive. That's going to be a little bit, hopefully, more stable, rob a little bit less power, and have the accessibility where I don't pull, half the engine apart to play with cam timing. I'll be able to do it pretty much on the fly, especially the way I want to set this up with the water pump and stuff. Might try to make one of those remote and put it off to the side, so that way I can just boom, right in, advance it 4 degrees, 2 degrees, retard it, and see what it does to get the most power I can to make it run. So it's going to be something to play around with. And an investment like that, for accessibility, something easy, makes the car a little bit easier to work on. And if I'm at a race or something and, want to make it a little lazy, I can just boom, right there, boom. Retard the timing, make it lazy so it has a little bit more top end. Come back around if I want to give it more low end, advance it, So it's kind of a, I don't want to use the word technique, but for certain styles of racing, like say an O-Prep street race, something like that, I can kind of, if I really care that much, if it makes that big of a difference, I can mess with it. And plus it'll be cool to see what it does with the cam in different positions. So I'm already going against what I said in the beginning of the video. I'm running over, so I'm going to call it a quits and stop there. But that's the rabbit hole $350 budget build for you guys. So until next time, you guys have a good one.